We're going.
We're doing the thing. I'm gonna go ahead and just share this
All right.
via Twitter. Yeah.
Maybe a tweet. Me too.
And then
Um.
also in this, you should be able to see on the side if we get any comments or anything
Yep.
on the video chat. And then in the upper left hand corner, there's like a little eyeball next to where it says live and the time. And on that eyeball, you can see what platforms people are watching or listening. Uh,
Interesting.
so it's Facebook and YouTube right now, although it will also be live video. Yeah. So, you know, fun stuff.
Yeah. So, I think my spoiler alert for how this talk is going to go is because I'm going to say, see who's right about Facebook ad targeting. The answer is we both are, but for different reasons. Uh,
Okay, I like it.
so we both are. So let's start about talking about.
I think you're muted. There we go.
There we are. I have my finger over
All
the
right,
mic.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna mute my. I'm gonna just turn down the audio on my phone real quick, just so I'm not feeding back in both places.
Oh yeah.
And
Good
then when we
point.
get people coming in, I can turn that back up.
Exactly. Cool. Alrighty. So we're in
Look
the
at this. We're already
show.
getting questions via YouTube too, so this is great. And we will
Awesome.
get to it. Is the
We'll
king?
get to it.
Is the long live the king?
Long with the king. So I think the first question
Oh, you should unmute yourself on the Twitter space.
I am. Oh, there you go. The
There
first
we go.
question. Hey there. The first question we should I think address is at the highest level. One of the reasons why you and I are coming at this from some very different viewpoints is that you're using Facebook as a tool to drive revenue and conversion on the platform, right? Like that's your primary use for Facebook ads. Am I correct about that?
I would say yes. However, the better way that I would phrase it is I'm using Facebook to amplify existing business models by driving a higher volume of consistent quality or improving quality traffic into a profitable customer journey acquisition system. That is the very long-winded way of saying it. Basically, yes, but I look at growth and acquisition marketing as the acquisition of profitable customer journeys. And generally, I use Facebook ads and other paid media to acquire a higher volume of people into those journeys. So I would consider myself a farmer more than a hunter.
Okay. Interesting. A farmer more than a hunter. So I consider myself more of a researcher than either. And
Okay.
I think that fundamental big difference in how we're using the platform explains part of why I keep saying yes, but as you're going only broad, only broad. And so uh, if you're in your early stages of business, is who I deal with mostly. And a lot of the questions you end up asking are, how do I find customers? What is my customer? Who should I be selling to? And that, if you let Facebook answer it for you, Facebook will tell you kind of blankly, this ad made this much money. Who was it served to? You can kind of, if you're quite advanced in your knowledge of Facebook, you can go diving in and using both looking at ad sets and breakdowns to begin to understand more about, hey, this ad served to these people in this gender and age demo. And you can kind of extract some of the knowledge around who this targeting worked for. But you really can't see if I want to export knowledge from Facebook on what audience cared the most about what my ad had to say so that I know what events do I attend in the real world? What on Google search, how might I wish to write my ads to persuade a particular audience? Or how might I want to do in audience testing or buy a newsletter subscription and subsidize somebody to run ads in a newsletter, right? All this information you can't really extract from Facebook on broad.
Yeah, I would agree. that the lack of the identification of that psychographic or demographic information does present that issue. However, knowing that every ad effectively creates its own audience based around how people engage with it, like every ad understands who responds positively and negatively to it. Therefore, every ad goes and finds other people. Like if your ad gets shown to 1,000 people and 500 people love you forever, and the other 500 people will burn you at the stake if they ever see you again. The next 1,000 impressions, that audience is going to look a lot like the 500 people that loved you. And that compounding interest of an ad building its own lookalike audience will let you know that the ads you're using, you can identify the ads that are ultimately earning spend and contributing at a contributing to the delivery of a desirable CPA. Those are the ads that ultimately your messaging is most effective with. And so I would say the way that I could do that market research isn't necessarily in trying to discover what audiences work, but more what messaging appeals, and from that messaging, effectively infer the audiences that I'm using. And I also say that because I have a general mistrust around the accuracy of psychographic and demographic details that we see in behaviors of interest groups, primarily because there is no development team at Facebook that is updating that software, and there hasn't been for many years.
Yeah,
so
it is like
it is 5-year-old tech.
agree. Yeah, that's fair. Interesting. I do see we have Joshua here hanging out. If we want to, let me see here. Can I guess ask, hey, Joshua, if you want to ask any questions, you should be able to just flag with, I think you can ask to speak, and I will be happy to give you a chance to ask us questions. We'll figure out how to make all the tech work. We're also streaming this live to Facebook and YouTube, so this is a complex, multi-headed hydra. But
yeah, I think the video, you take Twitter, and we'll divide and conquer.
We'll roll with that. I think one thing that I wanted to pull out from that is, so audience groups are definitely a bit of an aged, creaky device, or audience interest, I should say, aged, creaky device in Facebook. And that does add a certain level of suspicion to how accurately they target. That said, I have, over the last decade, had quite compelling results by using Facebook to relatively inexpensively answer the question of who cares about my product and what language persuades them. So, like, broadly speaking, and I mean, you're definitely a Facebook expert here too. Average click-through rate, which is usually a bad measure, right? Usually you shouldn't care about your click-through rates. You care about bottom-of-funnel conversion. But change how you think about Facebook for a moment. And if you don't have it as a system to drive revenue right now, but if instead you say, I have 3 billion people on this platform, and I can ask them all questions, and every ad that I run, once I segment it into an audience that I've controlled up front, I can now say, like for one client right now I'm doing, if I run identical ads to 20-year-olds and 40-year-olds who have an interest in a particular space, given that the interest targeting is wonky, I can see and can replicate a difference in the activation rates on ads for people in this space. And if I can see, hey, if I'm selling sports cars, it might do better to the 40-year-old crowd because they have money. It might do better to the 20-year-old crowd because they care more about image. And I wonder which one is true, and we can test and see. That right there, getting that information out and being able to say, hey, if I want to market to people who've liked the Lamborghini page or the Audi page or the McLaren page, and drive them into a sales funnel for a car dealership, for example, although I've never done this exact one. This gives me the chance to measure both interest rate at the top of the ad, and then once you come to my landing page, how likely are you to fill it out and go further? That right there, once I've learned that, I can export that knowledge over into any other channel I wish to export, right? Because Facebook has now told me these people this message. And what I've learned from these people this message applies to when I go to a live event and I want to think of who I want to meet at the event, or when I'm wondering about SEO, right? Who do I want to come to my website? All these questions are informed by Facebook as a very easy to pivot, very inexpensive channel for display advertising at big scale. So that's when you actually care about audience targeting. That's when you actually care about using upfront knowledge to inform what you're doing. Because you and I, it's like we both have an axe, right? And you can say this axe cuts down trees. Yes, it can. It can also be used to drive nails. And
Sure.
when you use it for driving nails, you don't care how sharp the edge is, right? So the difference in how you use the tool can completely change what you want to see out of the beginnings that have been used. So I see Matt and Josh, you are both here now as listeners. If you want to ask any questions, feel free to flag to speak, and I will figure out how to grant you access there.
Well, I know we have a question here from YouTube, so maybe we can take that real quick, and then we'll let these guys come in. All right, is the king hey, here you go. He's like, hey, where are you at? And then he shows up with this lovely emoji face because we got him up here. All right, so he says, what do I do if my product is seasonal and I have $60,000 days in 3K months and 8K days in the other months? I mean, my opinion here, just to get a little bit, as an aside here for some executional piece, and then we get back to the targeting questions. But maybe we can frame this in sort of a way here, because I think this is a great way of looking at the audience insight, which is, I think, kind of where you were going with market research is, what is it about my market in these 3 months where I'm getting 60K? And what is it in my market in the other 8K? And then with that, how do I invest far more heavily in the 60? And then I would first off try to leverage my media budget to do a lot more in the 60K. And then do a lot of what you're talking about here, Trevor, with the audience insights and market research in those 8K a day months. And understand who are the people that are still holding on. And then understand how can I more aggressively invest into those individuals. Because one thing is to say, hey, spend more on 60K days and spend less on 8K days. Got it. But I always say, when it's uphill both ways in the snow barefoot with a giant backpack on, you got to get to school. That's the best time to test, because what works there is going to be at a tremendous advantage when it's downhill on a bicycle on a hot summer day. And like, if you can take advantage of that, then that is where I would lean. I don't know how you feel about that, but what do you think, Trevor?
Yeah, I do agree. When you have the opportunity on the low demand months on your seasonality, like let's pretend you're talking about Christmas trees, right? Because that's, I mean, I doubt you do 8K a month in Christmas trees, but whatever, right? Like when it's not December, the sales are very, very bad. And also, though, nobody else is bidding, right? So that's the time when you can learn for cheap. Likewise, if you're selling, I don't know, Canada Goose winter coats, right? Again, sales are going to pick up in November, and they're not going to be great in June, except for folks who are making a trip to Patagonia because it's winter down there. So finding the in the cheaper traffic and the lower traffic months, learning as much as you can. And it's important, you're also teaching Facebook's algo.
Yep.
Right? Doing upfront targeting lets you also tell Facebook, I want more people who look like this. And then when you do either retargeting, which sometimes is appropriate, or you just take what Facebook has learned and build a new ad set with an actual conversion event as the optimization. Either way you wish to run it after you've learned who your audience is, when you're ready to ramp up your spend, when things get more competitive, when the market gets hot, you'll have prepped yourself during those bad months. Did that make sense?
I think it totally makes sense. Yeah. And I think the trick here is not how do we make the 8K months as good as the 60K?
You can't.
Yeah. The trick is how do we use the headwinds to identify the tip of the spear, the sharpest axe, to use your analogy from before, so that we can be more effective on those upsides.
Excellent. Yeah. All right. So
Yeah.
Hase, Matt, I see we have some other folks. Mike, hello. Welcome to some of these listeners here. Anybody who would like to ask a question, ping me with a request to speak, and I will give you all access to ask a question. You can also view us. We're on YouTube. We're on Facebook. You can drop questions there as well. Charlie, you might want to drop the link to the StreamYard video in Twitter so folks can join.
Okay, I'll do that. Do that right now.
All right. Well,
but yes, yeah.
While Charlie is there you go. We have another question coming here from Elvis. I'll take a gander at it while you go share links. So how impactful is the Facebook page score in your performance? We have some competitors sabotaging us and lowering our score on purpose. So there's two sides to that question. And one is how much does it directly affect performance? And the other is how likely are you to get whacked by Facebook's algo for fraudulent ads, which I have found recently they've gotten really aggressive on low page scores, just banning ad accounts entirely. And for dumb reasons. Like I had a client that was in the moving space, right? Like pack up boxes and put them somewhere. And so the ads were pictures of boxes and things like, let's move you and store your stuff. And they got banned for inappropriate content. And I literally cannot fathom the reason, except their ad account was 1 day old. And so their score was so low that the algo saw one negative like rating on the post and went, bloop, you're done, right? Like that's one side of it. In my experience, the overall page score, provided you have a high enough score to not get instantly binned, doesn't have a tremendous effect on the ads. Very early on, it may affect your CPMs, but if your ads work well, Facebook wants to serve ads that do well. And if your ads are driving the action that you pay Facebook for, they will continue to serve those ads and bid more and more competitively as time goes by. What have you noticed, Charlie?
Yeah, I think so. The page score is part of the advertiser score that Facebook brings in. Ultimately, the bid in the auction is budget. So how much money is that ad actually going to spend today? Budget is not what you put at the campaign level. It's what is the amount of work any ad has to do. Remember that every ad, I'm going to draw this out on a sheet of paper. So forgive me for those that are not watching, but I'm going to try to explain this as best I can. All right. Every ad, so the example here, we have an ad that is in the middle of a circle, a dot in the middle of a circle. That ad is in the middle of the circle. The further away you get from the center of that circle, the lower the match rate of that ad with having a high estimated action rate with that audience is. You generally have to move further away from the middle of that circle, depending on how much more money that ad has to spend. And as a result, eventually your ad crosses the threshold of that circle into the unknown outside of the lookalike audience. And that's where your estimated action rate depreciates so much that the cost per conversion or whatever it is that you're looking for ultimately becomes too high. That being said, that's part of the equation. The other part of the equation is, so it's budget, estimated action rate, and advertiser score. That page score, what I have found is it really matters in the hyperbole. So if you're if you are at like a 3.8, 4.0, and then you move to like a 4.5, 4.8, you will see a pretty big shift in the CPMs of your advertising. And it's not just the CPMs of your advertising. It also has to do with the placements that you get. Also, the same could be said for if it goes to like a 2.5 or something. Either way. And one thing I think people don't think about is that the placement of an ad on Facebook is tremendously important. And premium placements, what we would classically consider to be above the fold, that is lower cost inventory that is earned. So a brand that is doing, for instance, if you're doing if the estimated action rate and cost of your CPMs is very low, let's say you've got a really engaging ad that's working abroad and you've got a 4.8 page score. Odds are you might be the third piece of content when somebody opens up Instagram. It's like your sister, some brand you love, boom, here's an ad. Now that ad, not only is it far more impactful psychologically on the user with respect to the conversion funnel, but if that ad is something I don't want to see as a user, or is harmful to my, it causes me to consider leaving the app, it's also harmful to Facebook's business model. So when you are using targeting, or you have ads that are not any targeting, but when you are using targeting that's not a good match, or you are using ads that Facebook deems as being a liability to their business model, you're not going to be the third ad. You're going to be the ad that's 15 minutes into a doom scroll when somebody's like in traffic, or, you know, in the elevator, or on the toilet, or in bed, or something like that. Like, that is not only a very low quality impression so far as pushing forward some sort of consumer journey, but it's also way more expensive. That ad that's like the third thing in the feed might be $15 CPM, might be $10 CPM. The ad that's 20 minutes into a doom scroll might be $35, $40 CPMs. So my point to that is there's not a big change between like 3.5 and 4.25, but there's a huge change between 2.5 and 4.8. So I wouldn't say that the page itself, that page score, is tremendously important in that like a 3.9 and a 4 is the hugest difference. But I would say that the better that page score is, once you get hyperbolically outside like the bell curve, if you are doing better at that page score than your competition, odds are you are going to, even at broad, retarget bottom of funnel impressions from your competition. Somebody added a cart on Adidas, Nike, and Reebok. When I used to run New Balance, I know that my page score and my broad targeting, because we did a measurement study with it back when advanced matching started. My first impression, about 20% of the time, was somebody that abandoned cart on your pages within the last 24 hours. So that happened because my page score was really good and because my estimated action rate was really high. So I don't think it's the cause, but it is absolutely a piece of the puzzle. And if it's not good, it's going to be a lot harder to get other things going. So it won't get you started, but it can get you. It won't get you from standing still to a crawl, but it can get you from a walk to a run, if that makes sense.
That makes sense. I do. I like that. That's well put together. I like Josh's question here. He just asked, I'm for interest targeting, Charlie is for broad. What would you guys argue if you were to switch places? So I actually very much like broad once you know what the hell you're doing. Once you've, in two ways. One, once you've trained the algo with, you sent directed traffic to your page, you got the conversion events you wanted, everything works now the way it should because you were pre-selecting your audience up front. Now when you go broad, Facebook already knows who you want. And then I find the algo learns faster and you get less weirdness where like you want to level the algo up slowly and spend, right? But if you've already put 10K into pre-targeted audiences, when you move over to a broad reach, you can ramp up way faster. Now you know it works and Facebook does too. So that's when I like broad, is once you're ready to stop going, who do I sell to? And instead you're ready to say, I want to make some money.
Sure. Yeah, I would agree. If you are ready to scale up your investment, broad is phenomenal. My pushback there would be, I would also say broad is tremendously helpful when trying to figure out who to market to. Because if you are building ads and then doing an audience test, you're not actually saying, who does my brand appeal to? You're saying when I've taken a guess at what people want to see with my content, who does that guess actually appeal to? So when I have already narrowed down 90% of when I've already focused down to 5% of my available choice because I've decided a headline, I've decided a creative, I've decided a copy. Who does that appeal to? So if I can solve for 5% of the problem, that's great. But when I now want to scale it, I have no idea if that ad worked because it was the ad, because it was the audience, because I got lucky in the first few days. What if I have multiple interest groups and it was actually that was the fourth impression that somebody saw after clicking 3 other places, and that audience being a retargeting impression, 10 days into a customer journey was the actual thing that was lucky enough today because somebody else did some marketing on my in my vertical or niche that got me the sale. So for me, like what I teach in the Facebook Ads MBA program and over at Disruptor School with everybody, with all the other programs that I have, is I do the targeting, I do the testing at broad to figure out the messaging that I'm best at delivering. And then letting that messaging collate its own audience, and then deciding, do I want to get better at crafting that message to get new conversions? Or do I want to find a different message so that circle that I defined before with an ad in the middle? Can I get a couple of circles that might form this elaborate Venn diagram? And then Facebook can find the folks that are in one circle or 2 or 3 or 4. And I'm not spending nearly as much money for folks that are outside of that circle. And I'm not limiting the people that might want to actually see my content because I've decided to use some predetermined audience parameters from tech that hasn't been supported in 5 years that cost me extra to see if my guess on my ad is actually a scalable solution. So what I will say is this. I think broad is great when you're ready to scale up. I also like broad to do that market research. I'll also
but the problem is then you can't export what you've learned, right? Facebook will let you optimize in network and will do a great job of optimizing even broad, but it won't let you know what that optimization was. And that's why if you want to take your knowledge out of Facebook and not just spend, I get why Facebook does this, right? If they lock in a super good audience and don't tell you who it is, you're stuck spending money on Facebook. Good for them. But if I want to learn an audience and then use it elsewhere in my business, my only option is to say I have to use this tool in an unexpected manner to deliver the results I want to see.
I guess so. I guess my pushback to that would be, if I'm running 5 different concepts, say I've got a car dealership,
sure,
and I want to sell cars, I could have an ad that is, I've got the safest minivan, and I've got the fastest sports car, and I've got the cheapest sedan. Now, based on that, when I start selling minivans, I'm gonna have a pretty good understanding of, okay, safest minivan, good idea. If I now start talking about the price of the minivan or the quality of it, the experience, and I can improve that sales pitch, I'm starting to understand more and more of who the consumer is for my minivan. And I can understand which sales pitch does best for me.
You are understanding what sales pitch does best, but what you're not learning is maybe minivans do really well in in families, right? But what type of family? Do they do better in families where the parents are 40 or 30? Because that may change how you do all the rest of your marketing mix, right?
Yeah, but could I not take a look at the demographic breakdowns of my delivery for that point of age, gender, and location?
For age, gender, and location, fair enough. But for anything else, you can't, right? If I want to know, hey, if you buy a minivan, could I advertise on TV with young Sheldon, right? Like, would that be a good place to run ads? Because it's broadly in my demo as people who have this interest. If I can see, yes, it is, then I've exported knowledge from Facebook. Whereas Facebook might be quietly knowing, oh yeah, young Sheldon watchers, they love the minivans for whatever reason. And then Facebook will know to target that, but Facebook won't tell me unless I pre-select and then find it out the hard way.
Well, let's play devil's advocate here, because I used to do a lot of television. I used to run CBS of their Facebook stuff like 10 years ago, and we'd have like $1 million a day budget. And what we would do is we would test for the ads and see what ads work best. Then what I would do is, and there are people still doing that this year today. So whenever you're like an interest group, the cost just spikes one day. Understand that there's like 100 people like me dropping $1 million on top of you just to learn.
Yeah.
What I would do is I'd take that $1 million and I would run that ad. So I did like the launch of the Stephen Colbert taking over the Late Show, right? And I did like Supergirl and Code Black, like all of these like fun shows. Every now and again, somebody talks about a show, I'm like, oh, I did the premiere. It was fun. But what I would do is I would take that ad that proved to be best, and then I would run it against like 30, 40 interest groups. And from that, what I was able to do, I might spend $1 million a day for a week, spend like $5 million to promote the Late Show with Stephen Colbert as a brand new show on TV. Based on that insight, which I could do before the launch of the show, like a week or a month before, is we could then take that data. I was working at Omnicom at the time. I was supervisor of the West Coast operations for Facebook ads for Resolution Media. I could go to Chiat Day, which is basically just another office in the building. Actually, really fun building. So another hangar inside of this like lovely art project that everybody got to work in. And I could go and say, hey, look, you are selling all of the commercials nationwide for this show. Here is the audience data by interest group for who responded really well. So in that way, we could sell $50 million of ad time for the year based on $5 million of Facebook spend.
Yeah, and you needed the interest groups. And you needed the interest groups to learn that, which is my point.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
on Facebook, when you want to optimize in Facebook, Facebook is excellent. When you want to optimize out of Facebook, that interest targeting lets you learn and export data out. And that's like the fundamental differences in our approaches. Your approach is right a lot of the time. I do still think, and you've used it yourself the same way, just at bigger budgets than I do, because I work with small companies on purpose. That it's the same thing, right? You learn who cares, and then you can go and use that information anywhere else that seems applicable.
Yeah, it's funny. I had somebody over yesterday, and we were putting together a plan for the purpose of privacy concerns. Let's just say a very famous American motorcycle company getting into a fashion line.
Okay, that's a very narrow audience. I think I know who we're talking about, but we won't name
just
names.
NDAs. Got to be respectful.
I agree.
I don't need to name drop, but like that's So our plan was basically what you're talking about in exact reverse, where we found the ads that worked. Then we used the ads that worked and said, this is what people are most receptive to. Now let's find the people who are most receptive to this messaging.
Okay. Yes.
So that we can then go out of home and broadcast, etc. We had to plan like 7 million, but there's like a 30 million budget. How do we spend that other 23 million? Again, super high level. Obviously, I deal with numbers that a lot of people deal with, but like that is where I'm using that application.
Gotcha.
The other side of this, though, that I'm interested in your spot, and we're getting Elvis says that was really helpful. Thanks a lot. Thank you, Elvis. Is to bring back up Trevor's thing. I think a lot of people go into Facebook advertising before they know who their market is and before they know what product sells well.
Yeah. And
generally speaking, my advice to those people is don't. Because Facebook is really expensive. And what I mean by that is the exchange rate on your investment with Facebook versus other forms of growth and acquisition and revenue the exchange rate is far worse than search or
what would you recommend? So
my point is figure out a way that your business works.
Right.
Get the profitable customer journey acquisition machine figured out.
Yep.
Build your factory. Then get a bunch of work orders. Don't get a bunch. Don't say I'm going to make 10,000 widgets and then try to build the factory and then complain when it doesn't work.
Okay.
Does that make sense? So
yes,
like
but
a lot of times, my best advice why Facebook isn't working for people is because Facebook amplifies your business, and if you don't have a good business yet, you're just spending a lot of money to tell people that you're not ready for their business.
But I both agree and disagree here, because one thing that Facebook is good at. So you mentioned SERPs, you mentioned email, right? So SERPs is quite expensive. SERPs is more expensive than Facebook, and email is slow. Cold email outreach, to do it well, you need 90 days to really get things spun up. What you get with Facebook, I talk about this a lot when I'm mentoring startups. And I am, by the way, we have a bunch of listeners I should also make sure to toss in. If you would like to ask a question, make a request to speak here in the Twitter space, and I will add you in. I have no idea how we'll get the audio into the YouTube channel. I guess I'll hold my phone up really close to the microphone.
Yeah, just hold the phone to the mic. I used to do this back in Clubhouse all the time back in the day. Hey, you take the phone and you basically just do like one of these numbers here.
I got
phone.
you. Put it on speaker. Hold it there. All right. So yeah, if anybody has a question, flag to speak. We'll be happy to invite you in. But so, what you get out of Facebook and what I teach startups, I'm the top rated mentor out of like 25,000 at Founder Institute, is you've got the wolf at the door, which is spending money, right? It is buying services, running marketing budget, whatever. You have the rat in the basement. It's time. It's spending time. It is losing time and energy and effort because you haven't learned your business yet. And Facebook is when you're running Facebook ads to answer business questions around who's my audience, what do I sell? You're spending money instead of time. And what you can do is in 90 days, you can run, I mean, in my case, I'm running 18 different experiments around audience. At the end of those 90 days, you've answered, what's my funnel? And then you're able to move, right? Now, I agree, it's spendy. It's 50 grand at least to get you there. If you've got the money and you don't have the time, like a lot of my clients, right, and a lot of startups out there in general, you've got 10 people on the payroll and you haven't got your product working yet. Like the product works, you haven't got the funnel to sell working yet. What do? So you can spend 6 months, which is going to be 200K in salary, and maybe answer it. Or you can spend a month or two and get that answer, spend 20, 30K, and then you're ready to actually take what you've learned there and apply on all your other channels. So that's the pushback is, yes, Facebook is expensive in money, but it is one of the most agile in terms of pivoting, and it's one of the fastest in terms of time because your volume is incredible. I have a client last week, I accidentally, because their CPMs were crazy low, I accidentally ran them an experiment with, I think they had a $250,000 impressions on like a $1,000 spend because their CPMs were crazy low. And that volume that Facebook can deliver, even when you didn't want that much volume, right, means the statistical relevance of the data you're gathering is almost unbeatable. I can do 10 customer calls maybe in a week, right? If I'm working real hard to hustle potential customer calls, I can get 10,000 or 100,000 points of data on which offer is most compelling in that same time frame, and which do you think is statistically less likely to lead me astray. So that's the trade-off there, right? Facebook is spendy, Facebook is fast. Facebook in-app remains, if you're only optimizing conversions in Facebook, remains one of the best channels, even in B2B. I just wrapped up a contract with the client. We were doing a modest spend to your standard. I think it was 10K a month.
Hey, look, I know I have large numbers of numbers. Not all of my spend, by the way, is that there's a lot of people that have like come to my program. They're spending $50 a day.
Right.
I just happen to be, my specialty is taking folks from scale up to exit.
Right.
Not getting people from, I can't get you from standstill to crawl.
That's what I do.
From like a walk to a full-on sprint.
Got you. I'm standstill to crawl guy. That's the part of business that interests me.
Which I love. And that's why I think this is so valuable for people to understand the differences in how we look at things.
Yeah. So that for them, they were doing 10K a month. They were doing, I think, 25 a month on LinkedIn. And they were spending like $750 a lead on LinkedIn. Right. And they were happy because their ACV was 5 figures, whatever. Facebook which you don't usually see. This was an HR tech company. You don't usually think, hey, I want to go do B2B sales on Facebook. A lot of people don't think that, although I'm sure you know better. Uh, we were getting like $80 CPL, so 10% the cost on a 10K a month spend, and then moved over to Pinterest and got even cheaper because HR tech, where do you find 30 to 50-year-old women? Pinterest. CPMs there are even cheaper than Facebook. But we validated market, we validated the creative on Facebook, and then Pinterest, which is a less sophisticated advertising tool, we knew what was going to work. Off we went to the races, right? Like that can work very, very well as well to get you from, I'd say, a crawl to a walk. They were not quite standstill to crawl.
Gotcha. I love that. I love that. And I think that's a really big piece here in that we're talking about the application because, yeah, I think it's what I'm getting out of this process is, and I don't disagree with it. I think I would execute it differently, but I think we're on the same spot is using Facebook as, and I always say it's a market research and intent creation device at scale. It's probably the world's greatest market research and intent creation device ever.
Yes.
Awesome. We're building a foundation here. I love it. This is great. And then with that, you're using that to validate ideas from which to get to that crawl state, right? Like to get it to, if we say 80% of startups fail, you might be able to have a better than 80%, a better than 20% hit rate on success because of the market research you're doing. So you're investing in market research to get to, instead of a 20% success rate, 80 failing, 20 being successful, instead of getting a 20% success rate, getting to a 30 or 40 or 50% success rate or more. But like
I'm at about 50% these days. Yeah.
That's fantastic. So you have a 2.5x better success rate by doing this.
Yes.
And then you're going from that to the broad because you understand what's happening. So you're using interest groups, which is a very interesting use case. And I think it makes sense. I don't know that I would execute it the same way, but I like the overall thinking of let's do market research to understand how to get a higher success rate in a startup to get to the point of scale, and then adopt broad and go straight into it to scale what we know works.
Yes, precisely.
Got it. Yeah, for me, I think when I say I would do things slightly differently, because I totally buy into what you're doing and I like it, I would rather do wide scale concept-based testing around creative, specifically so that I can understand what creative concepts work, and from that infer the audiences through like stuff like what Sarah Levinger teaches with consumer psychology and many other great women and men in the space that are using that feedback, that data analysis a lot better than I am. I'm a data person. I cannot infer intent. My brain works a lot differently. I'm so happy that I know good people like that. Sarah also has a course in Disruptor School, not to be completely shy or whatever, but there we go. Not to be trying to be a mensch. Anyway, using that analysis of the creative that works to then identify these psychographic and behavioral and demographic pieces of information with which to then go after, I guess, to then go after additional marketing. I guess my point is, my issue that I have, number one, is I feel like the validity of the data that I'm getting from an interest group, for me, is I know that if I put an ad at broad and it works, I can trust that it works. If I put an ad in an interest group to say that that interest group is effective, I've got a lot of caveats that I have to check off my list. And that's sort of my view to this, if that makes any sense. So that why I'm a little suspicious on that. And then also, yeah, I when I'm talking about the exchange rate or the cost, I'm talking about how much does it cost to make money when you understand how to sell something. You're saying Facebook is far cheaper because in order to understand that on Google is and I agree with you, is phenomenally more expensive because it's an intent monetization platform,
Yes.
not a market research device.
Yes, I agree. That's a great way to put it.
I guess the only difference is instead of using targeting to understand who likes my content or who I can sell to, I would rather market test with my sales pitches and lean into what's effective. And then from that, extrapolate out how to marry these wins into other channels if I want to go that far. Because I guess the last point that I realized that completely exists in my head and I didn't say is if we're just starting out to see if we can make a business work and we're doing interest group testing on Facebook to understand our audience.
Yeah.
With the intent that we're going to take that and go to other platforms. I don't find that most brands need to go more than like don't need to leverage that other platform intent until way down the line. And at that point, their brand might evolve, the messaging might evolve, or the interest, the information that you get through business intelligence might already give you that answer anyway.
That's fair. Other platforms can include, right? What content do I write and post to Facebook and LinkedIn? What does my website say? How do I do customer onboarding emails? What product do I? I've got a client right now. They're what can I say? They're a very large financial institution in Asia, which is a rare client for me. But they have a brand new startup they launched without the success they wanted to see. And so we're relaunching it, which is why they came to me, because they're like, hey, new positioning. And they don't know yet how to prioritize their roadmap. And part of what this is telling them, the experiments we've run for them, is here is who wants what you're selling, and here is the features they care about most. We did by now it's like 36 different ways of targeting creative message audience, because fundamentally you've got to solve three things for go-to-market, right? Who's your audience? What is their problem? What do you offer to fix? And by doing that with a quite complex matrix of different solutions and different audiences, we're able to find 2 or 3 that statistically outperform against all the rest. And with that, then you're able to say, oh, I need to make this feature part of my launch packaging, because now I know before I even built the product, or rebuilt, in their case, the product, I know this is what people want to see. And so that is, I need to get the information out on the feature that worked best, on the audience that worked best, because how do I talk about onboarding with the client if my options, for a very large bank, am I talking to 20-year-olds who are trying to get their very first savings account out of college? Am I talking to 50-year-olds who are thinking about retirement? Super different onboarding for maybe the exact same technology.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I'm on board with you. I think that works. I think it's just a matter of what I think is great here is the understanding of ultimately. Oh wow, we got some.
Oh, my private photo here. How about
there's not even a link. Spammers, if you're gonna spam a chat on YouTube,
do it better.
Do it better. Don't spam marketers' things and not include a link. There's not a link, much less any GTM information. Like you got to get your 69xxx.site. Get it together. Get it together.
So
I forgot what I was going to say.
Followers, so, yeah. This is Charlie's YouTube stream just got hit by a spammer, and we're going to apparently wrap up the end of our call just making fun of that.
But yeah, I think, is there anybody else where we can address maybe some questions or get some feedback here? I think that'd be really great. If anybody in the Twitter wants to raise their hand, or anybody else of the folks watching want to do that, because I mean, there was something that we did have some folks that raise their hands. There's some questions here, but I guess my question to you would be, while we're waiting on that, is one, it feels to me like you have a lot of trust in the validity of the data of the interest group itself.
Sure.
Because I don't feel, and let me preface why I don't, and then you can maybe tell me why you do.
Yeah.
Instead of me hanging that out there and you say something and then me come back with like, I don't want it to be like a gotcha journalism or something like that. So number one, talking about something, so being in an interest group theoretically defines that you've liked a page, you've talked about something, you've been to websites where that metadata is included, your spending behavior according to your taxes and your credit cards includes certain stuff, your location data on your phone, all of that fun stuff. That being said, if we know that we might feel negatively about something and talk about it.
True.
Like if you go to a restaurant and you have bad service, odds are you're more likely to talk about bad service at a restaurant than above average service at a restaurant. It's either really good or it's anything less than expectation.
I still talk about the time that TGI Fridays served me a hamburger with the wax paper still on the cooked meat, right? It's been
Not
almost
good.
2 decades. Almost 2
Gotcha.
decades.
That would theoretically mean, potentially for this use case, you're in the TGI Fridays interest group.
Right.
So if we know that, let's say half of the people in that interest group theoretically are talking about something negatively. Now, that might be a low or high. I think it really depends on the topic, right? Some topics are far more hyperbolic. You know, cats versus dogs might have a different reaction than a political post or Bass Pro Shop or whatever, right? But let's just throw it out there. 50% of the available audience that is accurately being tracked might feel negatively about something, but they're in the interest group. We also know, based on multiple studies, because the tech hasn't really been updated, the best version of the tech a few years ago, about 1/3 of the people in that audience were there basically just by mistake, like just errors in the tech.
Yeah.
So if we're going to take 1/3 of the people off the pie, out of the pool, and potentially half of the people in that pool feel negatively about it, we're left with maybe 1/3 of the pool that is positive. Out of that 1/3, we're now trying to target the people within that 1/3 of the group that also have any buying intent. To me, that is such you've taken the available pool of who that ad might want to appeal to, because that ad might appeal to 50 million people, but you're at a fraction of 1/3 of a 30 million person audience, so you're down to like 3. And then it's the conversion rate on that 3 million that you actually happen to reach. Like, you see what I'm saying? Like so for me, that is where my pain point with interest targeting a lot of times stems from.
The answer is surprisingly easy, which is I honestly, I only care a little bit about the accuracy of how this audience is being selected. Right? There is some to export this data, I do need some information I can pull from there. But honestly, I care that it works more than I care that it's accurate. Right? If I say, here's my intersection of 8 different audiences, even if I assume 2 of them are wrong, if I've got information on, hey, this is what looked like it works in my Facebook targeting. One, I'm gathering millions of points of data, which automatically levels out a lot of the inaccuracy. When I go through my full set of 18 different experiments for a client, I'm averaging between 2 and 5 million individual data points at the end of that, right? Which means sampling errors have to be really big to cause a substantial problem in this data. And the other thing is, as I am getting this knowledge out, I'm testing it, right, 18 distinct times over the course of 2 or 3 months. I'm also learning enough information that when I then apply it somewhere else, in my onboarding, I can see who the customers who are signing up are, right? I can use Apollo to enrich my lead data and say, oh, everybody who I got isn't who Facebook tells me they are, right? There are many places along the way where you can double check and understand just because Facebook says this doesn't mean it's true. Facebook is, as I think you very intelligently put it, the largest market research tool in the world. With that size comes inaccuracy, and that's okay. All I'm putting together here are a series of bets around who this audience is. And then as I've learned this, I validate this on other channels. And if they work, if they don't work, that is on me, the business owner or the marketer working for the business owner, to solve and say, all right, this was our philosophy, this was our theory, this was the hypothesis, we tested it, we learned this, now we're doing this instead. And that whole funnel, a good marketer always tests, a good marketer always asks. And so even if Facebook tells you this is what works, if your Google Analytics or your CRM tells you something different, you begin to question, right? This has been a really interesting talk. I have a 1 o'clock I have to hop on. I'm sure you have other things to do with your day. I really appreciate it, Charlie.
I had a great time. From one bearded man to somebody with probably the best mustache I'm going to see all week, potentially all month. I don't know. I went to Geek Out, and Cody there has another, like one of these guys. So
all right.
And top 2 mustache of the month, because I'm not going to play favorite.
I'll take it.
Thank you, Trevor. This was great. I really appreciate it. And maybe we can do this again sometime.
Yeah, I'd love to. All righty. Thanks to all the listeners. Any questions you have, hit us up on Twitter with any follow-up if you'd like. And otherwise, have a great day. Take care, Charlie.
Yeah, see you.
Bye.